Hey guys! Today I want to talk to you about the cost of living in Odessa, Ukraine. I've been living in the city for the last 1.5 years and I wanted to share my personal expenses living, having fun, in the city. Obviously, it's a little bit biased because I have a certain lifestyle that I will disclose a little bit later. But I think it's really useful for those of you who want to move into the city and understand what kind of money do you have to spend to get a certain quality of life. Now, I know the common thinking is Ukraine is really cheap, and I think it can be cheap, but as anywhere else, you do have to pay a little bit extra for a lot of the luxuries in life. So that being said, let's dive right in. Number one biggest expense is accommodation. Now, we have a very beautiful and spacious apartment in Arcadia. We have two bedrooms and then a wonderful living room combined with a kitchen, and then a very spacious bathroom and a cloakroom. So overall, there's a lot of space for us, and it came furnished, and we are paying $500 per month. Because we are on a long-term lease, this is a fixed price that we pay regardless of the season. But if you come for a short period of time, you'll pay extra in the summer and you'll pay less in winter, just because Odessa is such a touristic place. So don't be shocked if in the summer for a similar apartment you'd pay around $800, $900, or sometimes even more. And in winter, definitely the prices are lower. Also, they're lower if you want to go for a smaller apartment or a studio. I have a friend who lives nearby, and he pays for a one-bedroom apartment and then the living room combined with the kitchen, they pay around $400 in Arcadia. So I would say like from $300 for one-bedroom apartment to $500 for a two-bedroom apartment is the norm. Now, if you come in the touristic season, as I mentioned, be ready to pay an extra, especially if you are in Arcadia, which is the touristic area, really popular among the people who want to go to the seaside, to the beach, or the city center, more popular among the people who want to party in bars, explore the city center, explore the historical part of the city. Here's my shoebox where we keep all the bills that we get, and we'll get into how much we pay for every bill that we have. It's really important to understand that Ukraine and Odessa specifically gets very hot in the summer and very cold in winter. So biggest expense in the winter month is heating, and heating is centralized, meaning you cannot just turn it off and not pay it. First of all, you will freeze in your apartment. Second of all, it's not really possible to do it. So in really cold months like January, you will pay around $2,000, 2,000 hryvnias for heating, and in milder month you can get around 600, 700 hryvnias for this. Usually heating season is from November till February, but it always depends on the weather. Now, number two is cold and hot water. This is usually the same regardless of the season, and we usually get bills for 150 to 200 hryvnias for this per month. And finally, electricity. Now, for electricity, if you're having an AC, especially in July or August when it gets really hot, you can pay anywhere 800 to 900 hryvnias. But if it's a mild month like March or May or April, then September, October, usually the bill for electricity for our apartment, which is a bigger one, is around 200 hryvnias. Internet is really cheap and really good quality in Ukraine. We are paying 220 hryvnias for internet, and then both of us have a mobile plan, and we are paying around 100 hryvnias per month for mobile internet, and we get 20 gigabytes of internet, which is an amazing deal if you think about it. Every time when I'm traveling in Europe, I'm actually surprised at how expensive internet is. And internet is really cheap in Ukraine. You have to take advantage of it. Oh my god, look at the sunset. It's amazing. It's one of the advantages of living on the 14th floor. We just have this amazing sunsets. I hope you don't mind the extra light. So let's dive into point number 3, which is groceries. Now, our situation is a little bit different because I eat breakfast, lunch, and sometimes even dinner at work. It's one of the benefits that I get for working for my company. It's an IT company. So during the week, I almost never eat at home. That's why we buy less groceries. My husband, on the other hand, he does eat at home, and we have this amazing lady who is our maid, and she comes to cook and clean our house. So for cooking and for all the ingredients that she uses during cooking, we are paying around 400 hryvnias per week. And she cooks pretty basic dishes, very delicious, but very simple. She can cook a soup like an Ukrainian borscht, she can cook a gravy with fish, and then she can cook some sort of salad with cabbage and carrots. So that is enough for my husband to eat during the working week. Otherwise, we do have some grocery expenses, which are around 6,000 to 7,000 hryvnias per month. And those are mostly things like fresh fruits, fresh vegetables for salad, meats, cheeses, bread, milk, eggs, different nuts and seeds, maybe some, a bottle of wine or anything like that. Things we need for household like paper tissues. So those are things more on the expensive side, and maybe if you are buying more accessible items, the bill will be so much lower. Number 4 is entertainment. Now, I have to disclose straight away that we are a couple without children, so we have the luxury of spending all the disposable income that we have on ourselves and for our own fun, which is again different from other families, other couples. Some of the things that we enjoy doing is going to the cinema. So if you look at that, 2 very luxury seats at a cinema, and by luxury I mean reclining, very comfortable big chairs with lots of space in front of you to stretch your legs, and then a big box of popcorn and 2 colas cost us around 450 hryvnias. Could you go to the cinema for a more accessible price? Definitely, but just somehow happens that we go for this option more often than not. Then if you're going to eat at a restaurant, a typical meal for us is around 500 to 700 hryvnias, and that includes 2 main dishes, usually 2 glasses of wine, maybe some dessert or a coffee. In Ukraine, you do leave tips, but not to the extent that you do in other European countries or in the US. Usually the tip percentage is somewhere from 5 to 10%. And also there are a lot of locals that don't leave any tips, and this is not considered extremely rude. Obviously, do leave tips when you can, but if you can't, it's not, it's not shocking to anyone as it is in the US. Finally, if you like to go out drinking, and I am not a big fan, but once in a while I will feel the urge to go to a bar. One of my favorites is Fitz, and you can see the review up here. So for a drink, you usually pay 100, 150, I think up to 200 hryvnias, depending on how difficult the cocktail is. I go with Bloody Marys, and those are priced to 100 hryvnias. So, it definitely depends on how frequently you want to go to a bar and how many drinks you want to have. And number 5 is transportation, and this will be the last point for today. Now, again, I have a pretty special situation with transportation, just because, first of all, we don't own a car with my husband. We actually cannot drive. And the reason we cannot drive is that we always lived in cities where we had a pretty good, reliable public transportation, and we were comfortable enough to rely on the public transportation, not own a car. Secondly, my work is really close to my home. I usually walk for 15 minutes in each direction to go to work and get back home. And my husband, since he's working as a freelancer, his office is at home, he really don't need to commute as much. That being said, if you do want to understand what the expenses for traveling within the city are, transportation is pretty accessible. So you pay 5 hryvnias for a ride on the tram. That would get you almost anywhere in the city, but in a slower fashion because trams are a little bit more slow. Also, you have the chance of going on a bus, on the trolley bus, or on the marshrutka, which is a smaller bus, not very comfortable, but much faster than the tram. And you usually pay around 7 hryvnias for a ride like that. And finally, we live in the age of the share economy. So we have a lot of taxi services, and I personally use Uber just because it's international and I can use it almost in every country that I travel to. So my rides on Uber within the limits of the city, let's actually have a look so I tell you the exact numbers. From 55 hryvnias to 80 hryvnias. I think the most expensive ride that I had was around 100 hryvnias because I really wanted to go to the heart of the city, to the city center in the rush hour. I had something to do and I paid a little bit more extra money. Oh, now I see that there's a payment for 120 hryvnias, but those are rather the exception than the rule. A typical ride is 60 to 70 hryvnias. If you are a foreigner who moves to another city and you're not sure whether you should get a car or not, I think a service like Uber or any sort of local taxi service is nowadays so much more comfortable and reliable than actually owning a car, having to park the car in the city center, having to pay for parking at home, and then fix the car whenever it's broken. Again, for me personally, it's much easier not to deal with all that different set of problems and just hire a taxi. Well guys, those were my biggest expenses in Odessa, Ukraine. I'm sure there is so much more to cover in terms of expenses, so if you do have any additional questions, feel free to write them down in the comments and I'll try to respond to every and each one of them. If you like this sort of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate it a lot, and watch any of my other videos right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.